4 o'clock on June 21st, 2021, and I officially open this meeting of the Conway City Council. We were to have Matt Dawkins from Seacoast Church with us. He has not arrived. If you'll join me, please. Dear God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our health and our presence, for our fine city, its staff, and all of its residents. We ask that you be present in this meeting, that you be our guide, and that you reveal truth so that we can do what is best for the city of Conway. These things we ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I welcome all of you, and I'm very happy that you're all here. Madam Clerk, have we satisfied the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act?
We have.
And Madam Clerk, this may be the last time I ask you that question. Our clerk is about to retire. She's been just such an important member of our team. And I'm not going to say much more because I won't be able to, but we may not ask you that question, but we'll certainly be asking you others. God bless you. I do not like goodbyes. We are now at the point that we will approve the agenda. Is there a motion? Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfinch.
I'll second Mr. Hyman's motion, please.
We have a properly seconded motion to approve the agenda as the consent agenda. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. I hadn't noticed until now that
Is that approval of the agenda or the consent agenda?
consent agenda, the agenda, I'm sorry.
agenda, that's right.
But I said consent. Would you change, did I say the agenda?
I said the agenda, but I'll make a motion to approve both.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll amend my second to approve both.
Thank you, sir. So now we've taken care of both of those. Thank you so much. Has anybody heard from Justin?
He's on vacation.
Oh, I see. I see. So we have one council member who is not present, but he's enjoying a family vacation. Two? And Shane. Oh, I see. One has had a medical procedure and the other is on vacation. It's unusual that any one of us is not present, but I just wanted to mention why they are not. Next on the agenda is public input. This is an opportunity for any citizen, anyone to speak to this council on almost any subject. The exception being that has to do with an individual employee because of privacy issues. We'd want to take that up in a quieter venue. I need to say that your comments would have to be limited to 5 minutes, and public input is not interactive. It is very unusual that we will respond to what you say, but I may in fact refer you to a member of our staff or give you some other guidance if it's just that simple. Is there anyone here today? We know that we have 2 people here for public input. Mr. Marshall McMillan, I believe, yes, sir. And if you'd start, please, when you arrive at the podium with your full name and address.
Marshall McMillan, 904 Kingston Lake Drive in Conway. And thank you for letting me make a few more comments. Appreciate the opportunity to have spoken at the last meeting. And Mary Catherine was great to send me a response, and I appreciate that. But I still have a few other comments, and I have not attended a workshop or anything where this has been discussed. But we think that we're not in an emergency right now, and the pandemic is gone, and the city's extra support for businesses might not be as warranted when there was spaces required and seating and all. But we're very supportive of the trestle and everything in Conway. But we do feel like that converting a public alley to any kind of private use is a taking. It's a converting public property into a private use that would be to create additional seating, additional sales, and additional profits. And it's from my understanding of what we were received and what has been presented is that we on the other side of the alley won't have any opportunity to use the space at all, other than just to walk by it or for customers to walk through it. But we know that the existing vehicular traffic patterns that have been there for 100 years are going to totally change. And we know that 4 parking spaces are going to be eliminated. So we know that those are changes, and we think that there potentially could be some new uses and issues that we don't understand, such as noise from public address systems or music. And with more seating out there, there'll be more people, hopefully, using the space and just conversations. There'll be visual pollution with more umbrellas. And they'll have logos on them and signage, menu boards, screening that we don't understand as to if it's little planters or chain link fence or whatever it is. More tables and chairs. But the prior use of our building was a professional office building for 100 years. And the boardroom and executive offices faced Norman Alley. And to have it, the potential to have it quiet in there for business uses is important, or it could be important. And it could make a difference as to whether or not we are able to repurpose the building should the current use change. We have no plans to change the use, but it was a professional office building for over 100 years. We have concern about the easy access that we have now to the reserved areas, to the reserved parking spaces. That's to immediately to the rear of our building. Well, there is one parking space that is private that we own, that our tenant uses for unloading inventory and to park her car. And we don't know how that space will be readily accessed with the proposed change. I admit that it looks like the person would be able to get there, but there might be tables and chairs nearby. Might require backing and all that's not required now. We think the trestle will probably continue to have pickup and usage with their outdoor uses. And there might be more congestion back there in the alley with half of it gone. So we don't know what the different new congested problems might be, but we're concerned. We don't have those now. We understand that the bollards and stuff are intended to be temporary, but it will be an inconvenience to have to move those things if we have to do repairs, painting on our building. And we're not complaining at all. We try to work with our neighbors, but just to use a parking space to put up a step ladder sometimes is a problem. So having to move tables and chairs and umbrellas and all that kind of stuff
Mr. McMillan,
is something that we don't have now that will be new, and we just don't know what that will be.
how close are you, sir, to being through your list?
Excuse me?
I was going to give you just another half minute if you thought you could finish that quickly.
Okay, well, we concerned about the traffic going towards Myrtle Beach, that it is easy to turn on Norman Alley now, and all that traffic will be blocked up at 3rd Avenue trying to make a left-hand turn. And we think that'll cause more congestive areas for the city. And we hope that that's been something that's given some thought. We don't know who's making the investments, if it's private or public or a joint venture. But if the use is going to be there for 2 years, somebody will lose umbrellas and chairs and planters and pavers and whatever's proposed to be done 2 years from now. So if it's going to be a problem, I hate to see anybody, the city or somebody else, make an investment.
Mr. McMillan, as much as I hate to, I'm afraid
That's fine. I'll
your
quit.
time
Be
is
glad
up.
to. But thank you for the opportunity. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Also here for public input is Mr. Antonius Neesmith. Mr. Neesmith, if you'd follow order with your name and address as soon as you come up, please. I also need to make sure that you speak really loudly. I get complaints that people in the rear sometimes can't hear. Mr. McMillan, I forgot to tell you that part.
Am I able to give out these?
Sure. Sure. Thank you.
My name is Antonius Neesmith. My address is 1029 Morningdale Street in Conway, South Carolina. And the name of the organization that I represent is Get Out to Stay Out. My name is Antonius. I'm the president and founder of Get Out to Stay Out, which is a nonprofit organization that helps inmates who are currently incarcerated in state correctional facility or county detention center. And what we do is we provide them with resources that is necessary to remain stable, whether that be housing, financial literacy, employment, etc. And I'm here today because I'm interested in applying for the Economic Opportunity Development Grant that would help expand our employment resources that we are currently offering to inmates. And pretty much with the program, we're projecting to help at least about 90 inmates upon release, and they will be able to open up a variety of businesses here in Conway, and those range from barbershops or beauty salons, general contracting, residential builders, electric, HVAC or plumbing. Those are general fields that some of them already have some type of experience in. And it's based on that research that I gave you that a lot of people are facing barriers, especially when it comes to receiving a license. And so with that kind of help and support, with them understanding how to run a business, to take their vision and put it into action, that could be a great opportunity for them to not recidivate or not having any kind of job. Some of the volunteers can help with the program as well, with training that's necessary inside the facility. A lot of facilities are starting to open back up and allow volunteers to come inside the institution. And so we'll be able to submit cost of what it would be for someone to instruct the program and what it would be for materials for them. But this is basically something that I feel is very necessary for the community, not only for them, but as a barrier for myself. Even though I have been convicted of a felony, I am a public official. My voter registration card and my dream is all that I had, and it has taken me a lot of places that I didn't imagine I would be. I also have court next week fighting for a license as a credit counselor, all because of my background and what I did years ago. And so the idea is to help these people with that dream that they have and turn that into an economic development opportunity for them.
Well, we certainly wish you luck with your application. I'm sure your success will be based on your meeting the criteria, but best wishes to you. I think that's a very worthy cause. We tend to never forgive.
Okay, thank you so much.
His name is Antonius Neesmith.
Okay, sounds good. I sure will.
Opportunity sitting here. Is there anyone else who would like to participate in public input? Please come forward, Ms. Bedell. And if you'd give us your name and address as well, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Bedell from the Trestle in Conway, 308 Main Street, Conway, South Carolina, 29526. First, I would like to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to try to do this to better Conway. We're not trying to make money off of this adventure, even though we know we will. What we're trying to do is make it so people want to come to Conway. We're even thinking about at night having it open later so people can have dinner. That's another restaurant in Conway. We are not taking any parking spots, any, except the 4 that we already are using. Fair Fashions, I've had a lengthy discussion with her, and she is up for this. She is looking forward to it. We're doing something to make Conway the place to come. That's why we want to do this. 10 years ago, I moved here, and you all opened your arms to me and accepted this young girl. And I thank you all for that. And that's why I'm pushing to get this done. We aren't taking parking spots. We're not trying to make congestion. What we're trying to do is help beautify Conway. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bedell. Is there anyone else present who would like to participate? Mr. Goldfinch? Is there a second, Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I would second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
Or properly seconded motion to close public input at this time? All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is item 6, special presentations. A, Employee of the Month from the Public Works sector.
Dedication to the city of Conway.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We just had a conversation recently, did we not? Congratulations, and thank you for your dedication. Item B is employee recognition of graduation from the South Carolina Certified Public Manager Program. Mr. Long, Chief Long.
The South Carolina Department of Administration sponsors the Certified Public Manager curriculum. It is an 18-month curriculum that is made up of different people from municipalities, counties, as well as state agencies. They come together and meet, and it is just a smorgasbord, so to speak, of agencies. It's not just police. It's people from all walks of life.
kudos to you. Doing that as you're working and you're a family man, that's quite commendable. We're so very proud of you. Congratulations. Item C is a discussion on request to annex approximately 182 and a quarter acres of property located along Highway 378, pin 36900000044, and request to rezone from Horry County Commercial Forest Agriculture, residential single family 40, and residential single family 20 to City of Conway low density residential. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, this is before you tonight just as a special presentation. It'll come before you at the next council meeting for public hearing and first reading. This is a request to annex and rezone this property. They intend to develop it as single family under R1. They intend to use the conservation subdivision design that's allowed in the UDO. This is their conceptual plan. It is still in technical review, so this is not an approvable plan at this point. It's still going through the review process. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Mr. White?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is this property going to be like another property that we had on Cultural Road, whereas they stripped most of the trees and then decided to come in?
No, they have not at this point stripped any of the trees, and they'll have to go through the processes of the tree survey as part of their review process with the city.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think the discussion then has been had. Thank you very much. Item D is a discussion on a request to rezone approximately 67 and a third acres of property located at 501 Liz Lane, TMS 13600505009 from City of Conway Low Density Residential District to Light Industrial. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, and this probably looks familiar to all of you because it was recently annexed by Santee Cooper under the R zoning district. At that time, they intended to provide a utility substation, but since then, they have submitted plans to the city that also not only included the utility substations, but some commercial office buildings as well that go along with this use. But the R district would not allow those metal buildings in that use. So with that, there's a request for rezoning from R to light industrial to allow those uses.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any discussion? Any questions from the council? Mr. White?
I'm sorry, but yes.
No. That's your job.
And the metal building is my issue because there have been other residents or business people that want to have metal buildings within the city limits.
Right.
We are not going to allow that, correct?
Metal buildings are allowed under certain zoning districts. They are allowed in the industrial zoning districts, the conservation preservation zoning district, and the forest agriculture district. So it would be allowed in this. It will be heavily buffered and not seen from the corridors, but it is allowed in certain zoning districts.
And are the residents in that area aware that this is coming?
We've sent letters per state requirements. Per state requirements, we've posted the property, advertised it in the newspaper, and sent letters to all property owners within 200 feet.
And that was my question. That was the question I wanted to ask for the previous item as well. Were those residents aware of what's coming as well?
The rezoning request was sent to them. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Timms?
I can't tell from the map, this is a very.
Right below food line. Right below food line. That's in the middle.
What else is industrial in this thing?
There is not much, but here, I'll show you a little. But I do want to make it clear, it is a large parcel, and it does appear a little scary to rezone it all to the industrial. However, this is the conceptual plan that has been submitted to the city of what they intend. You can see most of it is utility work, but there are a couple of buildings in the center. But we did this, and I realize this is rough, but the yellow is what they intend to develop. You can see the road going through, that's actually the new perimeter road. So it is going to, bisect this property and take up a lot of it. The rest of the property, they've got an archaeological site, several easements, some wetlands. So the development that they are proposing, nothing else could be developed on this property industrial wise. I know the planning commission had a concern that if the entire thing was rezoned to this industrial, that they could sell it off for development, but it would be undevelopable with all these other constraints. But you can see there's a mine to the east, Ms. Sims. So we do have that. And Mr. White, I know you had a concern too. Fisherman's headquarters is to the south. So there is some commercial there as well. And the existing substation, which you can see also. And the red parcel, Santee Cooper actually owns that one also.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Ms. Hyman. We'll move forward to item 7, public hearing and first reading. A, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance to amend the City of Conway's Conway Code of Ordinances, Title 4, Public Utilities, Chapter 1, Section 4.114, Definitions, and Chapter 2, Sewer, Section 4.234, Use of Public Sewer. Mr. Biddy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. What we have here before you is the amendment to our ordinance that we brought to you at the last meeting for our fats, oil, and grease ordinance that we're hoping that you will amend because we're starting to have issues with certain sewer discharges.
Thanks,
But I'll
sir.
be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone present today who would like to speak either in favor of or against this change? Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I move we close public hearing.
Is there a second? Mr. Hyman?
I'll second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
We have a properly seconded motion to close the public hearing portion of this item. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Goldfinch?
Mayor, I was just going to move that we approve first reading of said ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I'll second Mr. Goldfinch's motion again.
Thank you, sir. Unless there are questions or Mr. White?
One question, just that the businesses that has to deal with these, have they been notified of this change?
Not as of yet, but I think our plan is we're going to send some letters out just to inform them, of what's coming in the near future. They should already be doing this.
Yes.
They should be maintaining it, but we're going to hopefully send out some letters once James gets back and we'll further discuss it. But I think our best course of action would be to send out some letters just to let them know what's going to be coming so that once we pay a visit, that they can't be overly shocked like they've never heard of it before. So,
And I was speaking of also the new businesses that are opening up as well.
well, those are under requirements when we look at it
Before they
through
can
our
open.
tech review that they have to require for grease traps or whatnot. But yes, I think they should be given a copy of this ordinance so they'll know what they have to do to maintain it.
Expectation. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? I'll call a vote. All in favor of approving first reading of this ordinance with a show of hands, please. And first reading passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Bidding. Item B, a public hearing and first reading for an ordinance authorizing the sale of certain real property in the City of Conway located along the Conway Riverfront. Mr. Emmerich.
Good afternoon. This is a long-awaited motion to bring to you for the sale of the property on the riverfront at Kingston and 4th Avenue and the 3 lots next to the bonfire. These are parcels that were originally part of the exchange with the Burroughs Company. And we were to help them get the development in these parcels, and the city purchased them with the hope that we could enter into a public-private partnership with some entity to be able to get these developed. This is, I think, the third go-round to try to get someone in there. Steve Fitzpatrick of Genford Development has been working with the city now for well over a year on his intention to develop these properties. We are still in a little bit of negotiation on the property with his attorney and our attorney to be able to come to an agreement, but I would say we're 95% of the way there. And for us to be able to sell him the property, we need to have 2 readings and a public hearing of this council. So my request to you today is to conduct the public hearing and first reading today, knowing that we will not bring second reading back for you until that agreement is firmly in place. But we are very close to having that done as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Emmerich. So today this is first the public hearing. Is there anyone present today who would like to speak either in favor of or against the ordinance that would authorize the city of Conway to sell certain pieces of property as were described. Yes, sir. Mr. McMillan? We can waive your address this time.
Marshall McMillan. I'm, again, just concerned about parking. And I don't know the particulars about what is proposed or exactly where it is. But if the developer is going to be able to use the property from curb to curb and there's no parking there, it just seems real problematic for everybody else that's using the parking that's there now. I hope the city will, not put competing uses down there, that'll, restaurants and retail and buildings and not provide any parking and compete with the private sector.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Emmerich, would you just,
Anything else for public hearing? And I can respond.
is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this issue? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I would make a motion to close public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second, Mr. White?
Second.
We have a properly seconded motion to close public input on this issue as well. All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Emmerich?
Yes. So the development that is going at Kingston and Fourth is a condominium unit or apartment unit. I think there's still some debate on that, but it does have first floor podium parking. So there will be parking provided underneath the beginning of the building. At the bonfire site, the parking that is there is intended to be the parking for the entire development, as well as coming over by Peanut Warehouse. And the city is obligated to improve that parking under the original boroughs agreement from 2016. So we will be improving that parking as the development comes to be able to handle that, accommodate that growth. We already have installed some parking behind the Peanut Warehouse on the Laurel Street side. I think there's 20 parking places there. That was done as part of that agreement to improve that area as we can sort of implement that as we go. As the development of this site makes it sense for us to build that parking, we would do so. But we wouldn't want to put the parking in and then have it be destroyed by whatever development comes in.
Yes, sir. Makes sense. This is also first reading. What is the will of the council? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve first reading.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Ms. Timms? A properly seconded motion to approve first reading of this ordinance. Is there any further discussion? There appearing to be none. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Item 8, final reading. Final reading of ordinance ZA 2021-0621C, an ordinance to annex approximately 1/4 acre of property located at 101 Clemson Road, TMS 15119020001, and request to rezone from Horry County residential to City of Conway low to medium density residential. Ms. Hyman?
Yes, this came before you at the last meeting and first reading was approved, and it's back before you tonight for second reading.
Thank you, ma'am. What is the will of the council? Mr. White?
May I have a question? May I?
Sure. Yes.
Dealing with the location of this property, that's the only piece of property in that area that is annexing into the city limits.
At this time, it's going through a change of ownership, and therefore when they request city utilities to be changed to their name, we require that they request annexation at that time. So it's just that one home right now.
Thank you. Mr. Goldfinch?
But the yellow, I know it's difficult to see on the TV screen, but the yellow parcels are in the city.
Correct.
So our garbage truck already goes down there anyway.
Yes,
It's not like it's having to go out of the way.
correct. This is one of those neighborhoods that it's kind of piecemeal at this time.
Yeah.
Anyone else? As for final reading, I move that we approve. Is there a second? Mr. Goldfinch? Thank you, sir. We have a properly seconded motion to approve final reading of this ordinance. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ma'am. Item 9, items for first reading. First reading of ordinance ZA 2021-0706C, an ordinance to annex approximately to approximately a quarter acre of property located at 2609 Oak Street, PIN 32515030030, and request to rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway low to medium density residential. Ms. Hyman.
And this is a similar situation. The home is going through a property transfer, and so the new property owner was required to request annexation.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any discussion, Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, at the appropriate time, I'd make a motion that we approve first reading.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Timms? We have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Item B, first reading of ordinance ZA 20210706D, an ordinance to annex approximately a third of an acre of property located at 5106 Converse Drive, TMS 15118120004, and request rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway low to medium density residential district. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this is a similar request, change of ownership, and this is another neighborhood that, as you can see, some of the neighborhoods in the city, but a lot of it is not.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Is there any discussion? Ms. Timms?
How much difficulty is there with our solid waste and pickup? And this seems like we've had one in there for a little while, but now
Yeah.
we get two,
Yeah,
but there's a whole bunch more that's not there.
there are.
And they may not be there for years.
And they may not. You're correct. Unless we, check the restrictive covenants and try to ask them to annex in at this time.
We like to do that.
Yeah.
Which explains your recommendation,
Yes.
does it not? Thank you. Mr. White?
I move that we deny this annexation.
Thank you, sir. I'll second Mr. White's motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item C is first reading of amendments to Article 4, use tables, and Article 5, specific use regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance regarding light industrial and heavy industrial districts, as well as consistency throughout the UDO. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this amendment is a little bit of housekeeping with our ordinance. We recognize that our use table had some discrepancies with our conditional use section of the UDO. So basically, the use table lists certain zoning districts that didn't match the conditional use conditional use requirements. So this is housekeeping of that. And we also realized there were some uses that we hadn't identified in the ordinance. So this adds those as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there questions or discussion? There being none, what is the will of the council? Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve first reading.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Goldfinch. Properly seconded motion to approve first reading.
Comment.
Yes, sir, Mr. White.
And I do apologize, but it seems as if we've been having to review a lot of our ordinances, et cetera.
Yes.
And we paid a whole lot of money to get this thing done a while back.
You are not wrong.
And I think we might need to just go through it again with a fine tooth comb,
Yeah.
Not let somebody else do it for us.
And that is something staff, we try very hard when we find mistakes to immediately fix them. So
And I
that's
do
why
thank
you
you.
do see us amending it a lot, because we don't like those discrepancies, and we don't like when, if we're reviewing plans or working with someone on a use, we want to have the ordinance back up what we're doing. We don't want it to be inconsistent. So I agree.
And I do thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
And I think we should expect that there will always be adjustments because
There
circumstances
will.
change over time.
There will, and it's not uncommon. It was written 10 years ago. Things have changed since that time.
Was I here that long?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I'll call for a vote. Is there? Assuming there's no more discussion, all in favor of approving first reading, with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 10, consideration. A, consideration of the selection of an engineer for the Smith Jones Pool Rehab and Redesign Project. Mr. Rogers.
Good afternoon. A few months ago, council authorized using CDBG funds to repair and rehab the Smith Jones pool. And as a requirement of that, we have to have the project engineered by a qualified engineering firm. So we issued a request for qualifications. And to remind you, an RFQ just gives us the qualifications of those submitting and doesn't get into prices or any of that kind of stuff by requirement. So we accepted those submissions. Staff, along with CDBG representative from the county, interviewed 2 firms, the only 2 qualified firms that applied. They were CHA Consulting and Hanna Engineering, and we scored those, and based off those interviews, staff is recommending that council authorize the city administrator to enter into contract negotiations with Hanna Engineering from Myrtle Beach.
Thank you, sir. I'll move that. I'll move to approve that consideration. Is there any discussion?
Yes,
I mean, we need a second, but we can discuss in between if you like.
my discretion is, will we get an opportunity to see the,
May I accept the second?
Yes.
Mr. White, in the middle of your discussion, I'm so sorry. Thank you, sir.
thank you. It has the second. All right. Will we get a chance to see what the plans will be before it gets, done, the work?
The preliminary plans from the engineer.
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine we would prepare a bid package that would go out to a contractor, and we can certainly bring that to council for review.
It would include the scope of the work.
Right.
Which might answer
Yes.
those questions.
And while we're on that issue, one of my questions for later on, the property that's adjoining Smith Jones on 378, is that going to be a part of that cleanup, that property? Would that be?
Its cleanup is underway now. If it's not underway today, it will be shortly.
Thank you, sir. I'm good now.
All right, very good. We have a properly seconded motion to approve authorizing the city administrator to go into contract negotiations with the recommended bidder,
Hanna Engineering.
Hanna, I'm sorry, with Hanna Engineering. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Rogers. Item B is consideration of authorization of a bid to paint and repair a building wall at corner of 4th Avenue and Main Street. Mr. Emmerich.
And this is not to build a wall, but to repair the wall. This is the what I refer to affectionately as the ugly wall at 4th and Main Street, opposite the street from Kingston Park. This wall is not owned by the city. It is not a public wall, but it has a very public presence and a public effect. We have, as the city, tried to clean that wall as a test. It was not successful. The wall's in very bad shape, as well as, there's a great picture of it. It's the great ugly wall. We went out to bid on it. We received 1 bid. It's from a firm in Charleston. They intend to make minor stucco repairs, put 2 primer coats on it, and do some stabilization of the wall as well. The front portion is stucco, the rear portion is brick, and they would put 2 coats of white primer on the entire thing. The only bid, again, was $17,872, and staff recommends we approve it.
Thank you, sir. What's the will of the council, Ms. Timms?
I make a motion that we do this. It's been a bad need for a long time.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second? I'll second I'm sorry.
You good?
I'll second Ms. Timms' motion. Is there any further discussion? There being none, all in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmerich. Item C, consideration of a request for alley closure and shared space for the Trestle Cafe located at 308 Main Street, Norman Alley, PIN 36701010035. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, and this was discussed at the last meeting. As you all know, since that time, staff did send letters to the adjacent property owners, informing them of the request, and also included a list of frequently asked questions, which you also have in your packet, which hopefully answered most of the questions that the property owners may have, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions or concerns.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, Mayor Catherine, I had a question about access.
Sure.
There's a public alleyway behind the trestle and those other businesses, I guess.
Yes.
I've noticed that people park back there. Yeah, that right there.
Yeah.
I'm all for creating the dining thing, but I'm just wondering if we could make a condition on that alleyway stays clear. That way there's still access, a roundabout access where if you come on Kingston, you can still get out on Third. Is that our property, that alleyway behind those?
It is a public right of way. So that is something that we could enforce moving forward. Because I know there are other property owners that park back there as well. But that
It just
is,
seems like it would create a bottleneck.
yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Ms. James?
I would like to see us consider maybe making the switch over for these as far as limited period of time. Because this may or may not work, and I don't want us to go into that with the idea of trying to make it work, but if it doesn't, we need to be able to put things back, whichever way they need to go.
Sure.
And I just think to leave it open ended is really a mistake. I'd like to recommend that we go up to a year and revisit this at that time and see how things. We've done the same thing with pandemic spaces, so I think we could do the same thing again. I do want to comment that one of the hardest things the council members have to do when they make decisions about this is separate the people out of the picture, because we've got citizens, good citizens, people that we love and adore, and I sure want to eat there from now on, and Marshall's my neighbor, and, it's really hard to come down with a proper answer that doesn't hurt someone, and it's just, that's just a difficult thing for council members to deal with. I'll throw that in. Reference to it.
And
It's interesting.
if I might just sort of piggyback that, I've been in favor, but I think a year is a reasonable amount of time to really identify how smoothly things are going, how we might adjust if we need to, but allow the trestle the opportunity to have the outdoor opening. And I'm assuming that it won't take a huge investment on their part, since they already have the tables and umbrellas and such. A year might not be enough if they had not already done a good bit of that, but to test the waters and to see where we're going. Mr. Goldfinch, I'm sorry, I saw your hand after I'd started speaking.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things, and Mr. McMillan brought this up during public input, and we don't converse back and forth during public input. But one was, if noise becomes an issue, we have very clear and precise noise ordinances that will address that and will be enforced. Know that. Unloading inventory, again, these are removable stops. And I see us working with all of you to make that seamless. Whether it's a year, I would say up to, and here's my thing, and I've spoken to a lot of you, and I think that right now the highest and best use is for the restaurant application. However, if in developing your businesses there on that property, this becomes an impediment, then that's not fair. That's not fair to those businesses. And at which point I would be willing to readdress the entire situation. But I do think that highest and best use right now is the restaurant, and it's public. Anybody can go in there. Anybody, they're not closing this off. They can't do this. This is a public right of way. But I think I've come around to the idea that it is a good idea for now. And if in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years from now, there's a better use that the city wants to see done there, or it's an impediment, and I can't emphasize this enough, to another business that comes along 6 days, 6 months, 6 years from now, then I personally am gonna, raise my hand and say, we need to look at this again, because just like 2 weeks ago, when we approved this for Groucho's, it was very easy because that did not impact any other businesses. And so I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to do the same thing here. So I'm comfortable, Mayor, moving forward. So with that, I would move that we, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would move that we allow them, we temporarily close the road to allow for this.
Thank you, sir. I'll second Mr. Goldfinch's motion. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, what's temporary? What's temporary?
Mr. White?
Yes, I just want to know what temporary means.
I mean, I would say up to a year, and then it gets back on an agenda to revisit. But up to means that, and then again, this is William's interpretation of this, that if in 6 months, Mr. McMillan's property becomes something that by closing this and, is an impediment, then we need to look at it then, not wait a full calendar year. That's my take on it.
Right, in the letter that I sent out to the adjacent property owners, one of the questions was, what recourse is there if citizens don't want it closed, in the future? And the answer was alley closure requires council approval, therefore council has the authority to open it again at any time in the future. So I agree with you.
I would add that, for, any kind of repairs, deliveries, that, the trestle needs to be flexible with the adjacent property owners too, and I know you will, but be, flexible in terms of working together to make that seamless. Thanks.
I think we all recognize that outdoor dining is something that people favor, and it does speak to the vitality of your community. When people drive through, they may want to, in fact, stop where they would otherwise just drive through Conway. I think it's going to be a great change for our downtown. It's something that we've been talking about for at least a decade, very likely longer than that. So I hope this is successful, and I hope that time proves that it was the right decision. But the ownership still is in the hands of the city. And if there are issues, of course, we can revisit that at any time. And that's why I give my support. Anyone else have any final statements? That being the case, all in favor of approving the motion that is on the floor, if you'd show your hand, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now item 11 is City Administrator's report.
Hello again. Several weeks ago, we received a complaint that the electric vehicle stations at 4th Avenue and Laurel were not working. Those stations were paid for with a grant from 2010, 2011. Unfortunately, they don't make parts for those any longer. Robert's crew has band-aided one of them together that it's working, but the other one just is not operable. We were very fortunate in timing. The last week we had a meeting with Santee Cooper, and we think that we're going to be able to get 2 replacements and only be out of pocket a very small amount for the hose retractors that keep the hose from laying in the parking lot, which will prevent them from getting damaged. And if we do any marking on the parking lot, we would be responsible for that as well. So that's a very minor investment for those 2 electric vehicle stations. I'll update you further as we get into that project. And we've also asked Santee Cooper to let us know if any other opportunities present themselves in the electric vehicle for fleet, electric vehicle progression for fleet consideration. We know that Ford is working on an F-150 that's entirely electric, that has a 300-mile range, and they're trying to get it below $20,000. That would be a game changer for some of our fleet considerations. We met with DOT several times in the last couple of days. We met on Friday about the design of the new perimeter road. The northernmost piece of the perimeter road, it cuts off Hemingway Chapel in 2 pieces. And what was resulted was a cul-de-sac on the western portion of Hemingway Chapel Road that was nearly a quarter-mile long. And while there's only 2 homeowners on that end right now that would be affected, in the future, as development comes to that area, it would require people to drive north for a quarter mile, get on 378 for a very short amount of time, and then get on the perimeter road to get back to where they were. And that just didn't make any sense from a traffic standpoint. It also didn't meet our ordinance for the length of cul-de-sac. So we worked with them, and we think we've got that worked out. They're in a different project. They're having a pre-construction meeting on Wednesday for the next phase of work on the Main Street Bridge. When the Main Street Bridge was worked on a couple years ago, they encountered problems that were far greater than what they expected. And they exceeded their budget many times over, and they stopped the project before finishing, knowing that they would have to come back at a later point to finish that project. So they've got about $500,000 worth of work left to do on the bridge. They intend to close under the bridge again, but not on top of the bridge, for a few month period of time, sometime at the end of this year. We don't know when yet. Hopefully Wednesday will give us those answers. The road of 2nd Avenue will be closed for a shorter period of time, for about a month. Again, I'm not sure when yet, but we're going to find out. And hopefully this project is a lot less inconvenient for everyone than the last Main Street Bridge project, and hopefully it runs just as fast. Some of our concerns are the timing of it being in the fall and winter, when we know we have events in that area, and utilizing the Riverwalk for those events is always a concern as well. So we are working with them as fast as we can on that. Finally, on Scdot front, they're trying to schedule a meeting right now to discuss with the public the Coastal Carolinas University's request to add fencing to the center median of 544. This has been a project that's been in the works for a number of years. It will require there to be U-turn areas for traffic to get back to other areas, and it is for pedestrian safety. There is a lot of pedestrian traffic there, and they don't utilize the crosswalks or the lights. So this will hopefully help with pedestrian safety. A lot of people ask whether a pedestrian bridge would work there, and it would work for the people that use it, but it would not change anything for the people who already don't use the crosswalks. We are having a staff appreciation luncheon on the 29th at the Sports and Fitness Center. That's next week at 11:30. Please join us. And on the 15th of July, our Human Resources Department is holding a job fair at the Conway Recreation Department. Hopefully, we're going to help fill some of the many vacant positions that we currently have. Speaking of which, we are 27 positions short right now, including 8 in the police department, 5 in public works, and 4 in solid waste. That is going to be a problem if we can't get some of these positions filled. We are like everyone else in the current employment shortage. So if you know anyone who's interested in working for the city, now is a great time to apply. I mentioned the 2 new restrooms at the Billy Gardner complex at the last meeting. The restrooms by Ladybug Park are now completed and opened. I want to thank SCPRT and our local delegation, who granted us approximately $15,000 in a PARD grant for this purpose. It's been a number of years since the grant was given to us, but we're finally able to finish this project and get it ready and open. The new press box, which is at Field E, it's completely being constructed by our building department. It is 98% completed, and it saw its first official use at a baseball tournament this past weekend. It's a really beautiful building, and like anything else that Daryl builds, if there's ever a natural disaster, that's the building to be in to hide. Our 10 and under girls softball team has earned a spot in the state tournament in Bluffton, for which they leave on Thursday. So watch them eagerly and hope they can continue moving on. And the next meeting of this council is on Tuesday, July 6th. To remind you, it's a Tuesday, July 6th, due to the 4th of July holiday. And speaking of 4th of July, this weekend is Riverfest, and a reminder that the boat ramp will be closed, and the marina is very likely to be very busy, and the fireworks start at 9:30. The pop-up splash pad is going again on July 4th at 1 p.m. downtown next to the town green. So if you've got kids that enjoy splash pads, 1 p.m. downtown on July 4th. The last time we did it, it was a big success, and we're glad to be able to do it again. And that concludes my report, but we do have work department updates from Allison Williams in the finance department and Mary Catherine Hyman from planning. So start, Alice.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Ms. Williams, how are
Thank you,
you?
Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I want to take this opportunity to give.
But people behind you, I don't think can hear you. That's a little.
There we go. Is that better?
There you go.
Okay. I want to take this opportunity to give you a little snapshot of some things that happen in the finance department, not just give you a budget update, some things that are happening. We do have 14 wonderful employees that make up the finance department. 8 of those have been here for over 14 years. So we have a great group to work with. We issue over 200 accounts payable checks weekly. There's 140 hospitality payments collected monthly. 2,900 business license renewals were mailed in April. 17,000 utility bills are sent monthly. Of those, 3,700 are now actually bank drafted. Over 5,000 customers use our online payment system, which is wonderful. 2,000 still use our drive-through, and we have a couple hundred that still insist on coming in the building to talk to us. That's okay.
That's because you're so friendly.
We are averaging 250 new services monthly. We usually see a spike in July and August when colleges start back, students are coming in. We've had over 400 new tap fees since January. Phone tree messages and emails are sent out monthly to inform customers of late payments or leak adjustments or that sort of thing. Purchasing and inventory are part of our family as well. They work with departments to order supplies and prepare RFPs. We actually had a bid opening this afternoon at 2 for the new roof for the annex building. We're very excited to get a new roof. These are just a handful of things that are happening. We are just blessed to have a great group to work with. I'll take any questions you have.
Well, congratulations for all you do. I mean, I think what's really good about this kind of report is you just kind of remind us that what appears like the smooth, the duck on top of the water, underneath he's really paddling fast. Thank you for all you do. Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Williams. And the other is Ms. Hyman.
Yes, the planning department is comprised of 8 employees, 2 of which are here tonight, Jessica Hucks and Wanda Lilly. The department is responsible for zoning and land development regulations. We write the comp plan. We work with people that are interested in annexations, rezonings, building a backyard fence, historic preservation, basically any development from the large subdivisions to pruning a tree. We're the go-to for that. I know y'all see the big stuff every month on the agenda, the annexations, the rezonings, the amendments to the ordinance, but there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes similar to what Allison just specified. Since July of last year, July of 2020, we have reviewed 96 plats, 134 technical review plans, 318 house plans, 429 accessory structures, and 233 business licenses. We've sent 93 letters, complaint letters, folks that have chickens or RVs or things they're not supposed to have in certain places. We've picked up 879 illegal signs in the roadways. We've written 8 text amendments to the UDO, and we participate in a lot of different boards across the area to help us stay informed to what's going on so that we can do our jobs better. We're on boards with conservation groups, GSATs, housing, economic development, you name it. We try to stay involved with those different groups. We also house the GIS department, which keeps all of our data updated that every department uses, from fire and police to utilities, public works. We keep up with basically everything the city's doing in that system that helps us do our jobs better and help us with upcoming projects. As you know, Wanda stays busy with her special projects to beautify the city. You see her out and about. She's been working in the past week on 5th and Main plantings, island beds at the new parking lot behind the trash compactor, the earth. And she's also been prepping for Riverfest to make sure our Riverfront Park looks great for all the visitors we're going to be having. We've seen a lot of development plans coming in that have kept Jessica busy. She also finished the transportation element this past year and is starting to work on the resilience element. The rest of staff's been working on our sign ordinance and updating it, and you'll be seeing that very soon. It's a great team, works really well together. They're very, very close, but they're really excited to spread out in the new building. So that's something that the whole crowd's excited about. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any sense of when that move will happen?
We're hoping the fall. That's the hope.
I knew it couldn't be priority for
We're
a while.
working on it bit by bit. Yep, we're excited. We met with a furniture rep today, so we're excited.
Anybody else? Questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Right.
And similarly, again, I mean, just make it look so easy. Thank you for all you do.
It's great staff. Keeps it running.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is council input. So, Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I have 2 things tonight that I wanted to share. Before COVID, I spent a fair amount of time out at Conway High School working with some of the teachers out there and the students, teaching them financial literacy. And selfishly, it was an opportunity to get out of my office and go do something else and be of help. And then COVID came along, and of course that was over for a while. And I got introduced to via Larry, some folks at a father's place that do obviously a lot of work with fathers in different places, and started working with the drug court. And this, I say all of that to say this: the gentleman that spoke in public input, and I've already forgotten his name and I didn't get his card,
Neesmith.
Mr. Neesmith.
And Tom, yes.
I don't know what all is about that program, but in the last 4 to 5 months, my eyes have really been open to the fact that, there are a lot of good people who just get jammed up, and for whatever reason, and a lot of it's their background, a lot of it's, they didn't have a lot of opportunities that a lot of us had, and they're struggling. And to do something good, it's not just for them, but it is for our community. It is. And I've seen that with working with some of these gentlemen. And so if there's any way that, this is a feasible project, I'd like to pursue it. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but I would like for us to at least give it a chance, an opportunity to look at it. And then the other thing that I've got, Ms. Tessier, I was playing with my ink pen earlier, and I got to thinking, this is what you see. And Mayor, you spoke earlier about, you see the utility men, you see the police officers, you see the firemen, they represent our city. But the most important part of this pen is the part that writes, right? But you never see it because it's inside the pen. And it really made me think about you and all that you do for the city that people don't see. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor working with you. And I'm grateful for you and what you've contributed to this city. And I know that, we were here, and now we're here, and we'll keep going in this trajectory. But I want to thank you because you're underneath the surface, and most people don't see that. They don't see or experience what we see and experience. And so thank you, and congratulations on retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfish. Mr. White?
That's hard to follow. All right. My phone usually doesn't ring from complaints, but I got a lot of them this last week or two. And I'm going to start with Whittemore Elementary School. I got some pictures sent to me where there's some trash compacted things in the back of the building where something's being done. And the word is that we're tearing down the building and hadn't told anybody in the community. And I need some clarification, please.
We are not. The first thing the community will see is asbestos removal, and we're not there yet either.
I knew the answer, but I wanted to make it public so that, they'd get in the newspaper, Ms. Kathy. Secondly, on the building at 613 Wright Street that we were purchasing, we're not going to tear that building down, are we?
That is the plan, yes.
Okay, and the question was again, why are we tearing down the buildings on that street? That's a fairly new building, renovated building. CARG money was used to renovate that building. So that was a question brought to me, is why are we going to tear it down? Can't we find another use for it?
It is too close to the road to be safe for ingress and egress. And it's part of the city's long-range plan, as outlined by this council, to buy the blighted properties along that road and demolish them and allow them to be repurposed for a better, higher use and more appropriate use.
I'm just passing on. Yep. Thank you. The building that's by Lowe's, that was another question about what's been done there. And you answered me, but I just want to.
Sure. What we understand is that Rob's Auto Body has purchased that building, and I'm not sure what the use will be, but I'm assuming it's for that purpose.
Okay. That's by Lowe's. Okay. We asked for a mural on the building that is owned by the city, Father's Place building. Yes. And the first question I was asked was who is going to do the painting of the building. So a question that came out of that. So my question is, why can't we, the city, we get something done there? And it doesn't have to be, I don't want to do it a personal person thing, but just a snapshot of what the area could have looked like back in the day. So that question still remains, can we not do some type of mural on that building with the city's help?
We can. I'll put it on an agenda.
Thank you, sir. And lastly, this past weekend, rather, we had a Juneteenth celebration out at Smith Jones Community Center. It was very well attended. Thank you, ma'am. There were lots of vendors there, a lot of kids hanging out playing basketball. Someone donated $100 to some kids to play basketball. One kid won $50, another 25, and another 25. And that was the best spent money you could have done that day for those kids, because I know they've never seen $50 in their hand at one time. They were so excited. And then the question was brought up to me as in, why can't we make this a holiday or an annual event? Not necessarily with that group. They didn't ask me that. This is just the people that were there. Why can't we make Juneteenth a celebration day in Conway as well? And especially with it becoming a federal holiday, and that was the reasoning for the ask, if we can't do the same thing in Conway.
We certainly could consider it. What I would recommend is that we put it on the budget retreat agenda when we discuss other HR policy and have that be a council discussion item, if that's all right with you.
And also if the city and maybe even the chamber, could they be partners with this as well? To, bring more publicity to.
For that event?
Yes, for that event.
We can discuss that.
Yes.
I can't speak for the chamber at all, and the
I
role of the
just see it,
city will
I had to
depend on
throw
how.
it in.
Okay.
That's all my questions, comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Timms.
Oh, no, I got one more.
Ms.
I'm
Timms, could you hold up just a second, please?
The
Mr. White.
realignment of 16th Avenue and Brown and Ruth Street, that's being done. I saw some surveys going on and the folks were asking what's going on.
Yes.
Are the community members being, privy to that information?
It's an SCDOT project. I don't know how much community involvement they do, typically not very much, but the idea is to realign 16th with where Rue and Brown are now. Right now, there's a conflict of 3 roads and there's no light and there's an unsignalized crosswalk on 378, which is ridiculous. We can't get one on 3rd Avenue, but there's one on 378. What the idea was that we floated to GSATs for an intersection improvement was to align those 2 roads to 1 road, line up with 16th and to signalize that. And that will allow for safer pedestrian crossing as well as for buses and vehicles to get in and out of that intersection.
There's a need.
Yeah, and I don't know where they are in the design right now. We've reviewed several preliminary designs, but if they're surveying, and that's good news, that means they're getting closer to maybe property acquisition for that project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what's good news is I didn't know that they had approved it.
It was actually it's approved for next budget year, I think.
Wonderful. Ms. Timms.
I don't want to talk about much except that, and I don't think we can do anything about this, so I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, except I can't get off of my side of town because of traffic on Main Street going all the way out. The same thing is true on 501. I mean, the music festival at the beach just about put Conway out of business. We couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. You sat and watched the red light change. And the same thing is true. So I don't know. I guess when I get concerned about closing roads and stuff, we don't know what we're doing because we have so little effect on what happens. It happens to us, but we need to really watch this beach traffic and all this. Lots of cops out there if we can get them.
Nothing else, maybe we can be that squeaky wheel. Well, I mean, we have been, but. Mr. Hyman?
I think that Mr. Goldfinch read my notes before he started, and he'd probably be saying the same thing if I'd have gone first. But Mr. Neesmith, he left, but I absolutely echo what William said. Many of you probably know I deal a lot with criminal defense, criminal justice, and I see it so often, William's term of getting jammed up and it causing just the same thing over and over and over and over. You see people who basically, because of their one shortfall, they can't get out of their own way, and there's no help. So I I absolutely agree with William that that's something that we can help with. I think we should. And also my other note was congratulations, Barbara. I have not been around you as long as the rest of council, but I have certainly enjoyed my time.
I'm going to quickly reiterate what the two gentlemen on either end said. We've been investing in, I believe it's Tom Fox's program at J. Reuben Long Detention Center for some years now. And I think that speaks to our acceptance that the best we can do for somebody is try to help find them, get them another chance. City of Columbia, for example, has instituted a program that allows them to hire people with records, people whose newfound way of living has lasted for some period of time, because the struggle, I've been a public defender for some years, is just that if you mess up once and you get caught, I think everybody messes up once. If you mess up once and you get and you're sentenced, you're pretty much doomed for life. And if we can help that not be the case, I think our whole society will be better. Because the better our citizens do, the less crime there is, the more smiles there are, just a better community. Thank you both for bringing that up. And I can't say another word to Barbara in a public setting anyway. But we will now go into executive session.
Mayor, before that, there's a workshop downstairs.
There's a workshop before that. I'm sorry, I misread. So at this point, we'll go downstairs to have a discussion of the tree preservation ordinance. And while we're downstairs, you're certainly invited to join us. I don't know that there are any restrictions in our room. Okay, there are none. I think we all have our masks if you do join us. We're going to discuss the tree preservation ordinance, and then shall I announce the executive session? While we're downstairs, we'll go into executive session. For a discussion incident to the employment for the position of planning director pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 3470A. B, for a discussion incident to the employment for the position of city clerk pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 3470A. And C, a discussion of negotiations incident to the purchase of property in the flood area near Trinity Church. We will reconvene after executive session. We may take action on matters discussed therein, and after which time we will adjourn. So for those of you who will join us downstairs, we may take a 5-minute break between here and there, but those of you who
Where was Fraser tonight? Is she on vacation?
She's on vacation.
This is Bill, I guess.
All right, Pam.
We're back on, Jeff. Yeah, we're back live when you're ready.
So I recall us to order. Please.
There's been a lot of discussion about the tree preservation ordinance in the last few months, maybe last year. At the last meeting, there was more discussion of it, and I think Mary Catherine's prepared to give a kind of a presentation, an overview, and questions for the council. And then Mayor, at the end of that, I think we can maybe update it for our progress to that.
Absolutely.
Yes, and this is, there it goes. Okay. This presentation, after I know council's raised concerns and there's been different discussion points about the tree ordinance. So since that time, Wanda Lilly, the city arborist, and Jessica Hucks, the city planner, have worked on compiling some information, which I'll present to you today, but they've worked really hard reviewing other jurisdictions and different ordinances and the benefits of trees. And so I'll try to quickly go through some of this and then any questions that you may have. But I just wanted to point out, I know that there have been concerns about the tree ordinance. Staff doesn't want to weaken it. It is something that we stand behind and we're proud of. What we see is that developing projects are being designed for maximum density, not to the site itself. So that's something we don't want to lose with that. So I can make that clear as we move forward. And I just wanted to, remind that a lot of our logos in the city, we are known for our trees, and that is something that we take pride in. As you can see, it's in most of our logos that we use. There are many benefits to trees. This is a quick synopsis. I won't go into the details. I won't read them all either. I know that's not something I want to listen to. But we all know trees are great. They offer a lot to a community and a lot to the folks in that community. I know that council has discussed and asked questions about what trees are currently protected and maybe if that list needed to be amended. So to start that conversation, this is the protected trees that we currently have in our ordinance. You can see the list. There's different DBHs, and just for clarification, that DBH is diameter at breast height. So that's where we measure the tree to get those numbers, about 4.5 feet above the ground. And we also listed here how fast they grow, which you can see medium, fast, and slow. I won't read all these details, but if you want this information, we can provide it to you. But Wanda and Jessica did a lot of research on the different trees that we do protect and how they compare to one another. They also got photos of the minimum that would be protected, like this dogwood is 4 inch is when it'd be protected, and that's shown on the left. The picture on the right shows a mature dogwood. So first one is a dogwood. And then we also have crepe myrtles, again, the same thing. You can see the minimum on the left, and then the mature one with all the different benefits in the middle. Redbuds, hollies, American hollies, live oaks, which I know is our icon. Southern magnolias, red maples, bald cypress, river birch, sycamore, and then all other oak species as well. And this just shows some pictures. First, we have the willow oak, white oak, laurel oak. We also did some growth rate comparisons to pine trees, which was something that was discussed at the last meeting as well. If you have specific questions on that, I think Wanda could answer better than I ever could. And also we wanted to show you that with the tree mitigation funds that we receive, we do use those for citywide tree projects. And these are just some examples of some of the things that Wanda and her team have done across the city. And again, I won't read all these out, but the pictures should speak for themselves.
Are those trees that you planted down at the marina along to replace the rock, are they doing okay?
They're doing good.
Okay.
They're doing
I
great.
know some of them look a little dead. A little dead. Well, I was trying to.
There's a handful that we're holding.
Yeah. A little bit, yeah. But those are some city tree projects, again, it's one of those things, ones that are behind the scenes that we don't always see or recognize. And then we just wanted to show some pictures of, these are a residential corridor and a commercial corridor without trees, and the difference when you do have those tree lined streets below. Same here. Can you see the difference? And as you know, one big thing about the trees and one big argument is that it does help reduce stormwater. And with the trees, it also helps filter that stormwater. And Brandon Harrelson is here tonight, our Public Works Director, who can speak on this a little more than I could, but I'll quickly go through some of the points. I know one argument from the developers is that we require a stormwater pond and that eats up valuable land, and that causes concerns because then they have to put aside the land for the pond, and then they're also getting charged for the trees. But we wanted to make it clear that the pond is not required. That's one thing you can do, but you don't have to do the pond. It is possible to design a development in other ways.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
First sentence, second sentence.
Yeah.
A pond is generally the cheapest, what?
It's generally the cheapest stormwater solution.
I see.
Yeah.
What would be an alternative?
And I'll defer to you, Brendan, to give some of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Horry County Stormwater Design Manual, which the city adopted, has an entire section 1.6 for stormwater management. Really what it boils down to is when an engineer designs development, there's 4 things that have to be designed to. Those 4 categories is water quantity, which is flood control, design storm control, which is rate and volume, erosion prevention and sediment control, and pollution control, which is the water quality standards post-construction. So we get into, there's a whole entire chart, and these things are actually, you get there to it, encouraged by the Stormwater Design Manual. Some of those things are keeping natural flows. And so instead of cutting the trees down, putting a pond in, you can take the lowest part of a development, that block of woods. The engineer can get creative, design it, turn it into a marsh, permeable surface. So pretty much everything she has there to make it easy. A lot of things that we do or we see in these developments, your pond is the cheapest thing in most cases. You lose the least amount of lots, but you don't have to put a pond in. It's encouraged by DHEC and the EPA to see vegetated swales, rainwater harvesting, vegetated roofs, and the list goes on and on and on with the green infrastructure. But the biggest thing is retaining the natural state that is there. Your clear cut as least as possible. Leave as many trees, utilize that. The tree cover adds a whole lot more than just stormwater. It does things with the climate, everything else, and then it filters the water, which usually end up in the Waccamaw River. Does that kind of answer?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's right. Could you go back maybe 3 full frames? Next one. That one.
Yeah.
Why then are there not trees at the top 2?
Those aren't here. Those are somewhere else.
Okay.
We just wanted to show what a difference the trees do make.
And my next question to that is that do we have developments that come up like that without trees in the front?
We require them now. We do. Mhm.
But they're close by. Of course, I know.
And other, yeah. Mhm. But we do require street trees in new subdivisions. But that's, again, we know this was here for discussion, and I'll defer to Adam now and let him explain what's transpired.
So
we all know that there's been a push to the state legislature to prohibit cities from enacting rules or enforcing rules that prohibit the cutting of trees on commercial and industrial lots for other than landmark trees. So our live oak tree ordinance would be okay, but the rest of our tree ordinance would not apply to commercial development. So that is a precursor to us looking at our ordinance, because there is a movement at the state legislature to basically ground home rule and not allow us to govern ourselves. There is several recent developments that have had issue with the expense of our tree ordinance, which I think has caused this to come to the forefront at our city level. And I want to first bring up that our ordinance is written in a way that you can always appeal a decision of staff to our tree board and ask for a reduction in fees or ask for it to be applied differently depending on sets of circumstances. And that was not done by the development in question, the developments in question. They did not avail themselves of that option. That being said, there is always a wild card there of whether that would have been successful or not. So what we've been asked to look at on our ordinance, number one, is as Mary Catherine mentioned, is the species that we protect and perhaps the diameter at which we protect them. Number two, if there should be a cap on the total amount of money that a developer should pay if they are cutting down protected trees. And number three, if there should be some sort of blanket statement in our ordinance that would make it not apply to residential of certain size. How that looks is why this is being workshopped, because we don't know exactly what council wants. And Mayor, do you want to talk about our meeting last week?
I'll be glad to. You described it pretty well, because finances are the bottom line. We were talking about a development that is a bit unusual in the sense that it's a PUD. And there were requirements placed on the design of this property based on a local, the PUD itself, that were not enacted by the city. But what comes into mind is that, and I don't know whether we need to sort of bifurcate that one situation from the general, but the general statement of the developer is that it would be cost prohibitive to take down, to be able to pay for the trees that they feel like they must take down. They talked about not only there being a 25 foot buffer around the perimeter of the property, but there's another issue about their inability to, there was some discussion about their requirement to have a space put aside for retention. Yeah, I was working under the assumption that was required, but that didn't seem to be a likely. That didn't seem to help them at all because of some of the things that were required. So we were asked to consider that perimeter that pretty much says that you can't use that property. We were also asked to look at the property that it would take to establish these ponds, and that they shouldn't have to pay for, if the government requires that they take down the trees, then they shouldn't have to pay for those trees. You've sort of spoken to some of that already. I've been really set in my thinking, for the most part, about how all this works, and you didn't ask me for this, but I'll just get into what I heard that day. And I was around, I think I was probably an employee at the time that the most recent ordinance was put in place. And I know that it was the position of the council that the cost for taking down protected trees be such that people would choose not to do it. That it wouldn't be an ordinary value, but it would be such that they would think not twice, but three times before trees were taken down. The opposite side of the coin is I don't know that the council envisioned a time when tons of acreage would come in at one point, that the dollar figures would add up to what they are. All of those things, I think at least need to be discussed as we move further. I stand with staff in terms of our need to protect our trees. It is the essence of what Conway is. The value of having trees, the list goes on and on and on, and that, I don't think that'll ever change, as long as the world sits as it is. And I don't know what we need to do when circumstances differ, but we certainly want to be very careful not to institute something that spreads itself too far.
And Mayor, I completely agree with what you're saying. I've been one that has been a little bit outspoken on the cost. I've never said we don't need a tree ordinance, because I think we do. I think we do need to protect our trees. The problem I see so often, and somebody brought it up tonight about the clear cutting and then coming into the city, and we had discussed, well, maybe we don't give them a building permit. I don't think legally we can do that. And one more I got to think about it, there's not a whole lot of property in Conway proper anymore that is undeveloped. So the only stuff, I say the only, there's some, but there's not as much as we think. Most of the stuff that's coming in is coming out of the county, and it's on that forest agricultural before. Taking the trees down is their right. Again, I hate that they do it and then bring it in to develop it. But I don't know if we can create an ordinance in the city that relegates what they do in the county. And I know the county supposedly has a really hard ordinance, but I've never heard anybody fuss about it.
I think where it's zoned forest agriculture, that, I think we're on the same page.
But we don't have any.
But even at the county.
Right.
Where we see a problem is at the county, even if it's not zoned FA, if it's zoned single family or multifamily or commercial, and they cut down the trees, they still call it silviculture.
Right.
And we don't do that because you can't have a silviculture activity unless you're zoned for farming and agriculture.
Well, and that's kind of, I look at our ordinance and I understand the intent, and I'm all for the intent to stop that, but that intent is not being met. And it's kind of, I've talked with a few developers and said, is there something that we can do? Most of them say, nah. I mean, we're getting money for the timber that's cut. And I bought property before and cut timber off of it to help pay for the property. I understand that that's part of it. I know some people, that's their investments. They literally buy a property with pines so that, and I know pines aren't protected, but they do it so that at some point, when kids are getting ready to go to school, they can sell that timber. And it puts us in a situation where, are we telling people the right thing to do? And my biggest thing with the fees, and William and I both made comments about this, is the 1 acre wooded lot that has a bunch of 30-inch willow oaks on it. One of the things that I saw, Mary Catherine, that I never saw planted on, that I haven't seen us planted, is a water oak or a willow oak. And I'm not saying we don't protect those, but it's, if you've got a 30-inch willow oak, Wanda, what's the price on that? Do you know?
To purchase one? Like
No,
at a nursery?
yeah, I mean, like a mitigation. If it's a 30-inch, because it's $415 per, how many inches, 4 inches?
It's $450, yeah, it's $450 per 4-inch tree.
So that's about $100, so that'd be a $3,000 tree. And, if you've got 15 of those on an acre lot, our mitigation is costing more than the lot's worth. And, if it's something, we don't want just what you talked about, one of the lots that we need to clean up, that kind of thing. If we don't clean it up, it gets grown up with willow oaks and stuff like that. And then it makes it cost prohibitive, so nobody can do anything with that lot. So again, I'm absolutely not saying we don't need a tree ordinance, but we need to try to accomplish what our goal is. And I don't think it's doing it from these county parcels that are coming in, because I don't know if there's anything we can do to stop them from clear cutting that. But my concern is, again, that half acre, that 1 acre, the guy who's got 3 acres out on Long Avenue, and he may be looking at a $60,000 mitigation fee to build a house on property that they've owned forever. And that's what concerns me.
Yeah, I'm with y'all. And I think we need to find some balance and this is why my biggest concern at this juncture is that if we don't do something to find some balance or some compromise, that the state legislature is going to take action. This has already gone through committee. It'll go to the floor next year. And I want a tree ordinance. I don't want us to be removed from that conversation. And my greatest fear is that, like so many of these legislators who Kathy, put your pen down, that don't understand how their actions impact local government. And I think it's well-intentioned, but that's my biggest fear, is that, let's find some compromise somewhere so that they'll back down on the state level so that cities across South Carolina can have tree ordinances. I don't know what that looks like. Perhaps it's removing some of these trees from the list. I don't know.
So one of the positives that came out of our meeting last week was that there might be avenue for compromise. And part of it's found within our ordinance. I think this has been brought up before. In the penalties section of our ordinance, there is a statement that says that it cannot be determined, if someone clear cuts a property, that cannot be determined what trees were on that property, there is a fee of 10 cents per square foot assigned to that clearing. Now, reading it again for the second time, it's a B in a bigger paragraph that might also supposed to be applied A and B. But if you can't determine what trees are on there, you're kind of stuck with what that is. So that's about $4,500 an acre, a little bit less than that. So if the compromise were to start at $4,500 an acre as an option for a developer to choose. Another option could be for them to calculate the trees that they would have to mitigate and plant those elsewhere on their site, which they're allowed to do now, but allow them to plant them in the buffer, which right now we don't give credit for because a buffer is required. So if you're required to put a tree on your property by our ordinance, we give credit for the trees that are put against what they're mitigating. So if street trees are required in a residential subdivision, if they put a protected species as their mitigated trees as their street tree, then that would count off for what they would need to mitigate because they're putting trees back on their site. So if the intent of the ordinance is a tree for a tree and they're putting trees back, then they would get credit for that, both in the buffer and elsewhere on the site. So a lot of commercial developments are required to have parking in or trees in their parking lots. If they're putting trees that are, within the spirit of our ordinance in their parking lots, they would get credit for that. That would require them to plant a 4-inch tree and not a stick. But that's what we're trying to get anyway, is more mature trees they're planting. That would be one way for them to offset what they're mitigating by putting it on their own site. We allow them to put it on other sites, but we don't allow them to put it in the buffer or elsewhere they get credit for it. So that's the developer then would have two choices. Calculate the acreage that they're cutting down, pay the flat fee, or mitigate on site.
That's great. Have we considered having a conversation with the county about that same issue about people clear cutting and then coming into the city limits?
We've talked to the county. There's nothing they can do to prevent it either. If it's called silviculture on the county end, they can cut it down. As long as they don't stump and grade, they're allowed to cut them.
That's fine.
I'll let Ms. Tim speak first.
Well, this scares me a little. I can see past mayors flipping over in their graves today. Because we don't know what the state's gonna do. I can't see them changing anything just because Conway changes the tree ordinance. I mean, everybody's got to do it, not just one city, right? Or else they're gonna come in and tell us what we're
It's a
going
Conway
to do in a
legislator
year.
that's pushing.
The legislator who introduced it is from Conway, and I would hate to
Oh,
believe
great.
I would hate to believe that us changing our ordinance that the state politics are fickle enough that if we changed our ordinance, it would change the mind of the state
Oh, yeah,
legislature,
I
but that
don't
could
see
very
that.
well be the case.
The other part to this that I was gonna say is, I do think we need to do something to take care of the situation of all these people coming here and having to clear property to build houses for them. I mean, this is not a problem that we anticipated. but it's here. But I don't want us to loosen the reins so much that we throw out what's good about our city and what's good about our ordinances just to accommodate the developers. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just a little less money that they're gonna have in their pocket, but it's a lot less community pride, and I just think that our trees are our history.
And Ms. Timms, I agree with you. To an extent, the one thing that I kind of, what you were talking about is possible compromise. I know in county zoning, and y'all both know this, in some of our city zoning, if a property is, let's just say 5 acres or less and it's residential, I mean, if we set caps on certain things where if it was 5 acres or less, it was a less cap, a smaller cap. If it was residential, it was a less cap. If it was a commercial, it was a higher cap. If you had a commercial development over 5 acres, maybe your cap per acre is 10,000. If you have a residential piece of property that's 5 acre or less, maybe that cap, I think you said 43.
40, it's
Yeah.
whatever, yeah, 4,500.
Yeah, 4,500. When we say that, that way, if you do have somebody with a half acre lot that wants to clear it to build a house in Conway, it's a nice area and they're gonna better that area. They're not getting hit with maybe a $25,000 tree mitigation. But then if it's something that's 100 acres residential, maybe you raise it more. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but
Sure.
I don't see any problem with a sliding scale to say, because maybe if we did it 3 acres residential or less, maybe 5 acres is too much. I don't know. 5 acres, what was the standard with the county? You could do 5 acres. You could do how many homes on it? You remember that? You and I talked about it on a piece of property.
Three per acre.
If you have
Oh,
5 acres
yes.
or more, it's 3 homes.
3 homes on one
Without
lot, yeah.
subdividing.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was 5. But anyway, maybe the point is you don't want people doing a subdivision on 3 acres and getting the benefit of that. If we were to do it on that 3 acres or less, we would hope that it would be for the benefit of that person that's, buying a piece of property to build for themselves, maybe that kind of thing. But again, I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there that maybe that's a fair model to look at to try to figure that.
And the violation is now, it does say trees removed from non-residential or major residential development sites, 5 lots or more, or residential 2 acres or greater. They're the ones that have to pay that fee. So it's not exactly, but it's the same idea, so.
Right.
There was, I'm sorry, Mr. Goldfinch, and then I'll.
Go ahead.
You sure?
We're all here together.
I just thought of this. There's also this question, and I just about lost my question, about, what was I?
The tree survey?
Tree survey, exactly.
So
And having a certified person to do it and the cost associated with
I
it.
think the idea there was if you've got a large piece of property and all of the protected trees are in an area that's easy to define, you don't have to survey the entire property, but only the protected trees. There is a concern there that you would leave out protected trees if you don't do a tree survey of the whole thing, so it would require us to go in and double check. But that would save money for the developer not to have to do a tree survey of unprotected trees. And then they would pay the mitigation on the section that they're clearing, not the entire lot. So that way you're not making them mitigate for non-mitigation areas. And I think that was one of the things we discussed in the compromise as well.
Well, one of the things that we don't have a shortage of are people wanting to build neighborhoods here. What if, right? I mean, residential.
Not at all.
What if we kept a more stringent focus on that, because there's plenty of demand for that, right? And we relaxed our policies on commercial applications. And this is what I mean by that. I don't want a national commercial, whatever it may be, I mean, pick something, to not, and they're looking at the entire United States of America and they can move like this. I don't want them, if it's something that serves our community and benefits our people, I don't want them not to come here when they can go to Columbus, Georgia instead, because it's cheaper and it benefits our community. We want whatever that is. We want an A10 bowling. That benefits our community. and he paid a nice mitigation fee. We got plenty of people wanting to move here and build neighborhoods. Maybe that's where we focus. Can you go back 4 or 5 slides to that pretty neighborhood with the trees? That's like more than 4 or 5.
This one?
Yeah, maybe either one,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that bottom left picture.
That's
I got-
Conway too. That's the village.
Yeah, I got no problem saying to, Mr. and Mrs. Developer, if you're gonna take this tree out, we're gonna make you put it back. Because there's plenty of demand for that, right? I mean, and I think that's perhaps how we should be viewing this is there's plenty of demand for that, so put it on. But where there isn't as much demand and we want those services as commercial services, then we're willing to be a little more flexible.
That's right.
And with flooding being an issue, I had to bring that up. The trees will help with preventing some of this flooding that we're dealing with also. Even like you said that some areas are flooding now that didn't flood 5 years ago. So I think that would possibly help with keeping the trees there to prevent some flooding as well. Just had to throw that out.
Right, and that's just one more reason that, that they're important, yes.
Well, I also, in piggybacking on that, Larry, I think that areas that are more closely associated with flood areas, Lord of mercy, don't take the trees out. But if it's, out in somewhere that's never flooded and never going to, it's less of an issue. But there are places a tree can count for a whole lot.
Speaking to William's suggestion, I think we are seeing a lot more consideration of the conservation subdivision recently. And I think that might be in part because of our ordinance. And so I would hate to weaken the residential and lose that push because it is a lot better for flood protection and for, all those other things that we're talking
The
about.
small lots.
The small
I
lots.
think a lot of it has to do with the fact we're requiring it.
Well, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
it.
that I agree. I mean, I think us doing that, I think you said it a while back, and maybe both of y'all, that it was not something that was readily even looked at. I mean, and so they were coming in wanting a different density when they could have gotten it with a conservation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if there is consensus, let me say it and then we'll see what, because one thing we've been lacking is clear direction from council on this issue. So we should have maybe the same standards for residential. Nothing changes for residential.
Yeah. Have been since.
Okay.
It's all thing.
I just thought it was perhaps.
Done. You see if you can turn the thermostat down in the back hallway by the return. For commercial,
About this?
Yes.
it would be a cap of $4,500, basically, for commercial and industrial.
Is that what called, no matter what
Clear
size?
cut acre.
Per acre.
Oh, okay.
Or they can mitigate elsewhere on site, including buffers and other required trees.
And replacing trees. Are we considering buffers that maybe, for which the requirements are greater because of the zoning that they're in?
Again, that's atypical in that particular subdivision. But if with a greater buffer would be more area to replant. So you have more spaces to put. With a 15-foot buffer, you can't put a tree but every 20 feet maximum or you're starting to squeeze them out. But with a 25-foot buffer, you could stagger them and put more trees in there. So you could mitigate more on site in that way. And if you don't cut down the trees that are in the buffer that are protected, then you don't need to mitigate those.
Right. But my question, right.
Yeah. A thicker buffer is always preferred because the intent of a buffer is to create a separation.
Sure. But the question is whether or not the increase in the buffer that's required because of where they sit, is that something that we want to consider in terms of separating that kind of scenario from one where there isn't that requirement?
I would say no for a couple of reasons. Number one is the more sets of standards you have, the more difficult it is to administer. If you've got one that says in this subdivision it's this, and this subdivision it's this, and this subdivision it's this, it's very difficult for us to be able to do. The second one is that particular subdivision wanted a bigger buffer, and that was what was approved when it came into the city by the developer. We didn't tell them to make that buffer. They chose that buffer for themselves. So if we were to create a different standard that lessened that, it would be against the intent of what that was originally set up to be.
I agree.
I still think that as far as the residential, and maybe we can differentiate between developer and individual.
Major
There you
Yeah.
go.
Oh, that's a huge point. That's a huge
Yeah, I
point.
agree with that.
Yeah.
We could
You
do
got
that
us all on that one.
Yeah.
I would,
Single lot versus subdivision.
Consensus.
Absolutely.
Single lot.
Write
yes.
that down. That's the only thing we've all got.
If I trim my bushes back and stick it, the yard debris out by the street, the city picks it up. If I call ABC Yard Service and they stick it by the street, the city ain't picking it up. You know, and I think that's the difference.
We can figure out a way to be like a major.
Yeah, I think major.
minors, how many?
4 or less,
Okay.
major's 5 or more. In a 10-year period.
Are we interested in 3 categories then, or just 2? Commercial versus residential, or small, single sort of lot?
Yeah,
well,
I
4
feel like
or less.
that,
We put minor in with commercial and industrial, and it keeps it at the cap.
yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Just say that.
So commercial, industrial, and minor subdivisions are subject to the $4,500 cap per acre, or they can mitigate on site.
And major residential would be,
Same standards we have now. Now, the question
What
then
do you
is,
do with, how you divide up commercials?
all subject to the same. If it's a commercial development, then you get the new standard.
and they still have to follow landscaping and everything like that. This is just
Right.
tree mitigation.
All right, so a question on major residential subdivisions then, do we want to change the 10 cent per square foot calculation? Or do we want to leave it the same?
Are you referring to if a developer brings something in from the county?
I don't think, like I said, I mean, that's
I don't know.
concerning. But if they're in the city now and they clear cut without permission, they're,
Well,
Now, what's your
we're not
question
gonna
again?
do that.
Could you restate?
so if you're in the city now and you don't get permission, and you don't do a tree survey, and you don't come to us, and you clear cut your property, right now they're paying $4,500 an acre.
I think it's more than that.
More than
I
that.
mean, that's being blatant. I mean, that's one thing if you come and ask for permission.
What is the number?
Like you were saying earlier about if we didn't know what kind of trees were on the property, click cut them, we based it on something similar to that.
So how much you want it to be?
It's like, I don't know. I had the slightest idea,
I
but.
think
I mean, 20 cent an
you're
acre or
asking
20
us
cent
to
a
give
square
you a
foot.
lot of detailed answers.
It's a double, but it is.
And we're not,
Well, yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked about this detail.
That's what we're here for.
What time you gonna be?
If you did it at 20 cent, you'd be doubling on,
It'd be about $9,000, a little less than $9,000 an acre.
I'd say, do it
I'd
25
say
cent.
do 20, 25.
Yeah.
I'd say 25.
It doesn't happen very often.
But we want to,
It won't happen.
deter it from happening.
I think that gives us enough.
Like Reeves Maskell and that's in the leaves, right?
Yeah.
$2,500.
Yeah.
That gives us enough to start coming back with you. The other thing is, we will continue to research what happens if they clear cut it at the county in anticipation, but I don't know what we can do that might not get us sued. Now, if you're willing to go through the lawsuit, that's fine, but that doesn't seem like it would be the most advantageous thing for us.
We can take a long time to process it.
So can you go back through where we are real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, if y'all don't mind.
We've got 5 minutes on
So,
that.
for a major residential subdivision, which is anything of 5 lots or more, the penalty for clear cutting that property without permission is 25 cents a square foot, which is 2.5 times what it is now. For commercial, industrial, or minor residential subdivisions, there is a cap of $4,500 per acre, or they can mitigate on site, including in buffers or other required plantings.
And will you come up with a scheme to the extent to which they replant?
Yeah, that's already in the ordinance.
Okay.
What they would have to mitigate inch per inch, basically.
Okay,
If they take down a 30-inch tree, they would have to mitigate for 30 inches. That would
Okay.
be,
right.
I
I
can't do
just
that.
want to,
6.
just want to assume that, just want to make sure that's what we have.
I think that's good.
Any other nuance that maybe we aren't thinking about?
So residential mitigation stays the same. The only increase we're talking about is they come through.
Major residential.
Right,
Yeah,
otherwise
otherwise
if they were
it's-
to come through and clear cut and Wanda can't get out there to see, okay, that's a white oak, that's a whatever.
Otherwise, it stays the same.
And for a single lot, what did we?
That's
say?
the $4,500 cap per acre, or they can mitigate on site.
44,356.
Or they can mitigate elsewhere. So they can put the
Sure.
tree on public land somewhere else
Sure.
or on other land they own.
Sorry. In other words, they pay us to do it.
Not necessarily. So let's say William's cutting down 3 trees on his single lot. And rather than pay the $4,500, he's got another lot somewhere in the city that he wants to plant 3 protected trees on. He can do that. Or the equivalent DBH, which is in our ordinance now. You're allowed to do that.
All right.
It's tree for a tree.
And we actually would go to that second lot and make sure that it was done.
Yes.
Wanda does.
You do that already.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
I think that's,
Good.
I think that's good compromise.
Suppose that lot, excuse me, that lot that Williams cut the trees off was close
Wait,
to.
wait.
That's not William.
Let's use a historic, let's use
Suppose
George
that
Washington. George Washington is cutting down the cherry tree. Let's use that example.
Suppose that lot that was, those three trees were being cut off was close to a flood zone area.
There's nothing to prevent that from happening.
Right.
And y'all-
And I don't know that we can distinguish that, Mr. Webb, I would say just because what our flood zone is bound to change. I mean, it's subject to change, and it does change.
I just said.
I know, and I just think that's a variable that would be so difficult for us to predict.
I think we can discourage that, but they're not required.
And do pine trees suck up more water than most other trees?
They take up a lot of water because they grow fast.
And so if we're gonna make this about flooding, then and I'm not saying you gotta put pine trees on the protected list. I mean, if this is a flood, I'm just so nervous when I say it. No, Kathy.
You don't mind being quoted, do you?
Have a conversation, I got
You see my point there?
Anything else?
No.
Jeff, having
Just want to say, make a motion that we end workshop and go into executive session.
And do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Tibbs? We're probably taking a motion to come out of the workshop and go into executive session. Of course, we need one. All in favor, would show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all so much for being here. If you're